Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for being here for my capstone presentation today. My name is Lucy Wang, and my presentation topic is assessing maple species in the Annex neighborhood from 2011 to 2022. So just some background information. We know that urban trees are an essential environmental component of urban areas, especially in areas with high residential occupancy. To increasing the tree density and the tree canopy cover has shown an effective positive influence on reducing urban area air temperature, mitigating the urban heat island effect, and have other more beneficial effects to living quality and the environment. So it is important for us to know how are the trees doing in urban areas. In this project, I focused on the changes in tree growth rates and health condition with data collected from 2011 to 2022. So Annex is the first community in Toronto to do a complete tree inventory for their neighborhood. This is the area of the Annex neighborhood with tree inventoried by Neighborhood's program in 2011 to 2014. This section that was sampled in 2011 was assessed again in 2022. Resampled trees are shown in bright green dots on the left side. So Neighborhoods is a planning program developed by Dr. Kenny and Dr. Puric-Mladenovic to help and guide community-based tree inventory, growth measurements, and tree health monitoring. As we just said, the tree inventory data in 2011 was achieved from Neighborhoods program. The standard neighborhoods method were also conducted in 2022 and enabled a comparison of how the trees were doing 10 years in this residential area. The measurements of tree size include DBH, crown width, and the total height of the tree. The criteria of tree health condition measurements include the reduced crown, crown defoliation, branch pole attachment, unbalanced crown, leaning, rod and cavity on trunk, trunk scar, and other components. Due to time concern, I couldn't analyze all the health condition criteria, so I picked crown defoliation, rod and cavity on trunk, and the branch pole attachment to assess the health condition of trees. They are direct measurements that are used and indicators of tree growth and performance. The reason why I chose crown defoliation as a health condition indicator is because leaves is one of the most obvious factors that we can observe and examine the health condition of trees. Many environmental changes could lead to defoliation, such as unexpected climate change, pests and diseases, and the lack of water and nutrients. The presence of rot and cavity on tree trunk could be developed from physical wounds and became more severe problems to tree health. The rot and cavity could be infected by bacteria or fungi. The tree with this defect are relatively weak, which could have higher chances to be the target of pests and diseases. Branch pole attachment is also important to discuss, since some local residents mentioned large branches fell on their roofs or cars after a storm early this year. The thicker and heavier the branch is, with a sharp angle between the branch and the main stem, the higher probability that the branch would break and fall, especially with strong wind and heavy snow. For species selection, I focused on the 3 species in the genus of maple. Although the most abundant tree species in this study is eastern white cedar, they commonly were used as a hedgerow species. There are 9 maple species are found in the annex, makes 24% of all trees. 4 native and 5 non-native species were found. I worked on maples, and here the 3 most common maple species will be presented. They are Manitoba maple, Norway maple, and the silver maple. The overall objective of this study is to investigate the growth rates of 3 maple species and examine their health condition changes from 2011 to 2022. The first objective is to assess growth changes of maple species from 2011 to 2022. The first part is based on DBH, tree crown width, and the total height. The second part is to examine the differences in DBH between the three most dominant maple species. The second objective is to assess the changes in tree condition for the three maple species based on crown defoliation, rod and cavity on trunk, and the poor attachment. The reason why I chose these three indicators is because they are obvious health condition signs for everyone, and I think they are more representative for tree performance. For example, I didn't choose leaning because leaning is usually associated with conflicts with surroundings, which is not a direct health condition indicator. Also, I think these tree health defects are urgent to be resolved. Let's take a look at the results I found for DBH growth. The first criteria is average DBH growth per year with a unit in centimeters. The average DBH growth per year are shown in this histogram. Few trees with measurement error in 2011 were excluded in the analysis. From the result, we can see that Manitoba maple and the silver maple have significant faster DBH growth rate than Norway maple. From the average crown width growth per year with a unit of meters, I didn't find any significant difference among the three species. They have similar crown width growth rate. Also, for the average total tree height growth per year with a unit of meters, there are no significant difference among the three species, but we can see silver maple has a bit slower average height growth. This does make sense since silver maples in the Annex are older, and I will discuss the DBH of the three species more in the next result section. The second section of results is DBH distribution. In 2011, most Manitoba maples had a DBH between 0 to 15. In 2022, most Manitoba maples have a DBH between 15 to 30. To look at the total numbers of Manitoba maples, there are more trees with smaller DBH than that with larger DBH. The relatively small DBH and the young age of Manitoba maple contributed to the almost reversed J-shaped DBH trend. Also, we can see that some Manitoba maples are growing between structures, which limited their growth space, as the one shown on the figure at the right. This Manitoba maple regenerates well and grows between a house and the fences. The DBH distribution of Norway maple is almost normal. There are fewer small and large DBH trees, while most of Norway maples have medium sizes. This also makes sense since after people realized Norway maple is an invasive species, we planted less of them, so there's no more input of young Norway maples. Silver maples have many more trees with a very large DBH, such as greater than 90 centimeters. The DBH trend of silver maple indicated that silver maples in the Annex are old, which also matched the early history of silver maple planting in 1920s. The last section of results explain the current health condition of the three species with three health indicators. We can see that rot and cavity on trunk is not a major issue for the three species we have in the study, since the percentage of them that have the defect is not high for both 2011 and 2022. But there is an increase in rot and cavity for silver maple and Norway maple, from 11.6 to 17.7% for silver maple, and 7 to 12.7% for Norway maple. Break into more detailed result. There are 4 levels of defect severity. Level 0 means there's no defect present. The higher the level, the more severe the defect is. We can see that all 3 species do not have many trees with severe rot and cavity problems. Most trees are in level 0. Crown defoliation is a real problem observed in 2011 and 2022. The condition is aggravated in 2022. About half of the total population of the three species have the issue of the defoliated crown. Number of trees with crown defoliation have doubled for Norway maple over the 10-year time frame. The severity level of crown defoliation was exacerbated in 2020 with a reduction in the number of trees that have no crown defoliation, which is in level 0, and the increase of trees in higher severity levels. The last is branch pool attachment. It is also a defect that affects tree structure and, more importantly, creates higher risks for potential hazard to surrounding residents. From the data, we can see that trees with this house defect increased from 2011 to 2022. Norway maple is the most affected by poor branch attachment, and the problem has doubled. Overall, the three species have fewer trees without pool attachment in 2022, and more trees with higher severity levels. The severity level goes up with tree growth. As expected, Manitoba maple and silver maple have grown faster in DBH than Norway maple. Their performance in health condition with the three indicators are similar. Rot and cavity on trunk is not a huge concern for them, while crown defoliation and the pool attachment are affecting their health, especially for Norway maple. I recommend the Annex to be cautious about weak branch attachment to prevent damage and injury from fallen branches, particularly in summer and winter when storms and heavy snow occur frequently. Prune branches when it is necessary. Keep monitoring crown defoliation, since it is an easy way to tell the health condition of a tree, especially crown defoliation is a health concern in the Annex. Since Norway maples do not have a great performance as Manitoba maple and the silver maples do, I recommend the Annex to encourage people to take good care of Norway maples, although they are invasive in Toronto, and avoid planting Norway maple in the future, which they already tried. Maples makes about a quarter in all trees in the Annex, and they can diversify their canopy. However, I think there are some errors in the data collection fields in 2011. We are confident of what we measured and collected in 2022, but we don't know the confidence of data from 2011. Some indicators are codependent, such as if there was crown defoliation in 2011, in 2022, that could be missing crown or pruned branches. It is more important to know how to make sure people are accurate with condition observing. Also, it is hard to separate health condition severity levels between one level down and one level up. Overlaps between the two adjacent levels could occur since the identification requires teams to be trained. Especially some indicators are easier to observe than others, and building confidence takes time. It is necessary to train the observers to do work more carefully to minimize differences between the adjacent classes. And next, I would like to thank my internal supervisor, Dr. Danijela Puric-Mladenovic, and my external supervisor, Terri for their guidance and support through my project, and also to Tony and Vicky for their help. And a huge thank you to my family and friends and the 2022 MFC class to make a stage of my life meaningful and memorable. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Terri?
Thank you, Lucy. That was very well done. So I have a question. You did talk a bit about the defoliation. Did you have any guesses as to what may have caused the defoliation, and what do you recommend the residents can do about this?
Yeah, because as the picture I showed for the Manitoba maple, because its growth space is like squished between a house and the fences. I do believe the structures are causing defoliation for it. And also some trees in the annex are not well planned for plantation location. So usually some trees like 4 or 5 trees are squished in one small area. So competition for water, nutrients, lights often occur, which also could lead to crown defoliation.
Okay, and then the next question, so as a follow-up to that, based on your findings, how would you create a planting strategy to take the neighborhood through, say, 10, 20 years? Like what kind of thing would you recommend in terms of a planting schedule?
Yeah, I think I really recommend the neighborhoods, like the owners for each house to have a plantation plan, not to be very complete, to cover all criterias, but to avoid limited growth area for the trees. And also I noticed that some house owners, they do not have trees in their backyards. So I do encourage them to have some to increase the local tree canopy cover in the annex neighborhood. Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
Danijela?
Thank you, Lucy. That's interesting. So now we know how fast they grow, even though we have 2 time periods. I want to go back to Manitoba maple. So was it planted mainly or based on what you've seen and from the data, or it's self-established in the neighborhood?
I do believe Manitoba maples are self-established, especially most of Manitoba maples are found in backyards, not as street trees. Yeah, so.
So what would be your recommendation? What to do with them? Like, because they make a significant portion, like, and they're considered as invasive species. So what would be the management recommendation for Manitoba maple?
Yeah, I think for Manitoba maple, it's very similar with Norway maple. Since they are invasive species, but they already established their own population and contributes their canopy cover for the neighborhood. We cannot just cut them tomorrow, so we can get rid of the invasive species. I think we should take good care of the invasive species, but we need to avoid any more plantation of them.
And my second and last question is, what's your thinking about silver maple? Because we've seen from Vicky's slides that those trees planted in early 1900s are still in many neighborhoods around Toronto, and they're in fact making the big chunk of the canopy. And we see that species, it's on its way out from the community and neighborhood. So what's your opinion about silver maple and the future?
Yeah, it is interesting for silver maples because we know that there are many old silver maples in the annex. And because they're old and huge, people usually take more attention on them. Say, oh, okay, we have large silver maples in our neighborhood, so we need to protect them. We need to have more large silver maples. So, but it is also a concern because the growing space in the annex, some large silver maples are having conflicts with structures and also sidewalks. So it is really important to know how to balance the silver maple we have and the current growing condition we have. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Is there any question from anyone in person here or virtual? Andy has a question. Okay, Andy, go ahead.
Sorry, I got to get in on these neighborhoods questions. Another
you,
good
it's great.
presentation. And the neighborhood involvement in the annex goes way back, and it's really nice to see the progression here. Lucy has mentioned that some of these criteria that are in the neighborhoods analysis are more or less correlated or related at least. And you also drew attention to poor branch attachment. When you were doing the inventory in the summer of 2022, did you remember seeing much evidence of poor branches being pulled out by the windstorms of well, particularly the derecho? I don't know whether it went through there in May 22, but evidence of poor branch attachment transitioning to a big scar where the branch had pulled out. And of course, over time, that scar could transition to rot or cavity as well. Do you remember seeing much of that while you were actually doing the inventory on the ground?
Yes, I think mostly I saw the presence of poor branch attachment and some rot and cavity on trunk, but not much for trunk scars.
But yeah, what I was getting at was recent evidence of poor branch attachment actually failing as a result of wind, or sometimes it just happens as the tree grows. But that transition from poor branch attachment to a scar, and you're quite right that poor branch attachment and the branch fails can cause damage to people or property, but it also inevitably causes a lot of damage to trees.
Yes, definitely.
So it doesn't ring a bell. That's okay. I'm just curious, and sort of as a follow-up to that is that in your recommendations for a planting program for the annex, would you also include recommendations for a tree maintenance program? Because it's often fairly easy to get people to plant trees, but it seems to be very difficult to get people to take care of them after they've been planted. And poor branch attachment is the classic case where a little bit of pruning when the trees are young goes a long way for the life of the tree. So what are your thoughts on tree maintenance and tree planting, how that fits together in a stewardship plan?
Yes, definitely. As you mentioned that people always saying that, okay, we are going to plant more trees, but the afterwards maintenance usually is not that ideal for tree house. So I also encourage to do a program that combine with tree plantation and also tree maintenance strategies. And also during our site visit, we saw that there are some new planted sapling trees in a park, but some of them are already dead. So the plantation was not that successful. So I think the techniques and afterwards maintenance should be brought up to our attention. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks. Good presentation.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lucy.